They're watching you now. The same people who dismissed you, ignored your calls, laughed at your ideas, and they can't figure out what changed. Here's what changed. You stopped caring about their validation, and that terrified them. You're about to learn 9 attitudes that make people regret undervaluing you. Not tricks, not manipulation, real transformation that makes their regret inevitable. Before we start, subscribe to this channel right now. You'll want access to everything we're building here. 1. You became unreachable without becoming rude. Remember when you used to answer every text within minutes? When you'd drop everything for people who barely acknowledged your existence? That version of you is dead. Strategic unavailability, not games, real boundaries. Marcus Aurelius understood that accessibility destroys mystique. When you were always available, you were predictable, forgettable, replaceable. Now you respond when it suits you. Not out of spite, but because you genuinely have priorities that matter more. The person who used to leave you on read for days suddenly gets anxious when you don't respond in hours. The friend who flaked on you repeatedly suddenly wants to know why you're so busy. Here's the truth. You're not pretending to be busy. You actually became someone with a life worth protecting. You stopped waiting by the phone for people who wouldn't cross the street for you. And when you did that, their imagination filled the gaps. And imagination is always more interesting than reality. You're not cold. You're warm to the right people at the right times. You're just no longer a 24/7 convenience store for people who only show up when they need something. Subscribe if you're ready to learn the rest. Each attitude builds on the last. 2. You stopped defending yourself to people who never believed in you. They questioned everything you did, every choice, every decision, and you used to explain yourself over and over, like a lawyer presenting evidence to a jury that already decided you were guilty. Seneca said, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." You know your port now, and you stopped asking passengers who aren't even on your ship whether you're headed in the right direction. When someone questions your choices now, you don't debate. You smile, nod, and keep moving. This drives them insane. Their questions were never about understanding. They were about inserting doubt, keeping you small enough that their own lack of action felt justified. When you stop playing that game, they lose their power. You decide to start a business. Old, you would have spent hours explaining, seeking approval. New you says, "I appreciate your concern. I've made my decision." Then you execute. Your refusal to defend yourself signals something powerful. You don't need their validation to proceed. And if you don't need their validation, you must have found something better. Now they want to know what that something is. 3. You celebrated your wins without seeking their applause. You used to announce every small victory, hoping they'd be proud, hoping they'd finally see your value. They barely noticed. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." You stopped talking about your wins and just stacked them quietly. When you constantly announce achievements, people can rationalize them, minimize them. But when you go silent and they hear about your success from other people, that's different. Third-party validation hits harder than self-promotion ever will. You transform your body. Old, you would have posted progress pictures every week. New, you just does the work quietly. Then one day, someone who hasn't seen you in months does a double take. "Wait, is that you?" You just shrug. "Yeah, I've been working on myself." That casual response to a major achievement communicates more power than any humble brag ever could. People start noticing you're different. You carry yourself differently. You speak with more certainty, and because you're not explaining it, they become obsessed with figuring it out. Stay subscribed. The next attitude is crucial. 4. You mastered the art of moving on without closure. They never apologized, never explained, never gave you the closure you thought you needed, and you spent months waiting for it. You stopped needing them to acknowledge the hurt they caused. Seneca taught, true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. You stopped making your future happiness dependent on receiving past apologies. The person who hurt you expects you to still be affected. Instead, they find peace. You're not bitter. You're not broken. You're not even bothered. You genuinely moved on without needing them to make it right. This terrifies them, because if you moved on without closure from them, it means you didn't actually need them to heal. You found a way to heal yourself. You don't confront. You don't demand. You just exit. Quietly. Completely. Weeks pass. They expect you to break, to reach out. You don't, because you found something better than closure from them. You found closure within yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." You changed your thoughts about needing their validation, and your entire life shifted. When they see you thriving, they panic. They thought their absence would break you. Instead, it freed you. 5. You stopped competing and started creating your own lane. They said you needed to beat them, outdo them, prove you were better. You were exhausted trying to win a race you never signed up for. When you compete with someone, you validate their existence as your benchmark. That's giving them power they don't deserve. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." You stopped wanting to beat them. You wanted something entirely different. While they were competing in the obvious game, you invented a new one, with different rules, different metrics, different definitions of success. You're in the same industry as someone who always made you feel inferior. They had more followers, more money, more recognition. Old you would have tried to beat them at their game. New you realized their game was boring, shallow, empty. So you started playing a different game. Depth instead of breadth. Real impact instead of surface metrics. Your approach started attracting different attention. Not shallow attention, deep attention, loyal attention. People started saying, "You know who's really doing interesting work? You." And suddenly, they notice you're on a completely different path, somewhere they can't follow. Marcus Aurelius understood, we care more about their opinion than our own. You stopped caring about their opinion. You created your own definition of success based on internal metrics they couldn't measure. Peace of mind, alignment with values, quality of relationships. These don't show up on leaderboards, but they're infinitely more valuable. Make sure you're subscribed. The next attitudes show you how to maintain this power. 6. You became selectively generous with your energy. You used to give everyone everything, your time, your energy, your wisdom. Most of them took it for granted. You didn't become selfish. You became selective. Marcus Aurelius served Rome but didn't serve everyone equally. He understood that leadership meant making hard choices about where to direct energy. Not everyone deserves access to your best self. Some people have proven they'll waste it. You started asking, is this person worthy of the energy I'm about to give it? Most of the time, the answer was no. The person asking for advice never takes it. The friend asking for help never reciprocates. The family member asking for your time never respects it. Old you said yes anyway. New you understands that saying yes to everything means saying no to what actually matters. The people who got unlimited access suddenly have limits. They test it. And sometimes you say, not right now. No explanation, no apology, just a clear boundary. But you didn't become less generous. You became more generous to the right people. The friend who always shows up gets more of your time than ever. You're giving the same energy, just directing it intentionally. The people who lost access realized they were categorized, evaluated, found wanting. They thought they had permanent VIP access. They didn't realize access was a privilege that can be revoked when abused. 7. You stopped reacting to their provocations. They know exactly what buttons to push. The comments that hurt. The subtle digs disguised as concern. You used to react, defend, explain. That's exactly what they wanted. Complete emotional neutrality. You stopped feeding their need for a reaction. When someone provokes you, they're trying to confirm they still have power over you. Your reaction is their reward. Take away the reaction, and you take away their power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed." This isn't about pretending. It's about genuinely not being moved. Someone makes a passive-aggressive comment about your life choices. Old, you would have felt defensive. New you hears the comment, processes it in 2 seconds, decides it's not worth your energy, and responds with, "Interesting perspective," before changing the subject. No emotion, no defensiveness, just complete neutrality. This breaks their brain. Happy people don't try to provoke others. Secure people don't need to tear others down. So when someone tries to provoke you, they're really just advertising their own unhappiness. Why would you take that personally? Eventually, they give up. Because there's no point in provoking someone who won't react. They realize they've been wasting energy trying to affect someone who moved beyond being affected by them. Subscribe to make sure you don't miss the final 2 attitudes. 8. You started celebrating their success without bitterness. They undervalued you, disrespected you, counted you out, and now you're supposed to celebrate when they win? Yes. Genuine happiness for their success while being completely detached from it. This destroys people who wanted to see you bitter. They expected jealousy, resentment. Instead, they get sincere congratulations. Marcus Aurelius taught, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it?" You let go of the anger, not because they deserved it, because you deserved peace. When you genuinely celebrate someone else's success, you prove you're not in competition with them anymore. Scarcity mindset says, if they win, I lose. Abundance mindset says, their success has nothing to do with my success. There's enough for everyone. You've shifted to abundance, and they can feel it. The person who said your business would fail just landed a major client. Old you would have felt that stomach drop. New you sees their success and thinks, good for them. That doesn't change my path. And you send a genuine message. Congratulations. Well done. They're confused, suspicious. They check for sarcasm. There isn't any. You meant it. And that means you're not sitting around thinking about them. Epictetus said, freedom is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Their success is beyond your control, so you disregard it as a factor in your happiness. You're free. Make sure you're subscribed. The final attitude makes everything else work. 9. You became someone who doesn't need them to regret anything. This is it. The attitude that makes all the others work. You stopped caring whether they regret losing you or not. This seems paradoxical. How can not caring about their regret make them regret it more? Because the moment you stop performing for their regret, you become genuinely magnetic. Everything we've talked about only works if it's real. And it only becomes real when you stop doing it to make them regret losing you. Marcus Aurelius didn't care what history would think of him. He just tried to rule well. That's why history remembers him as one of the greatest emperors. You're not becoming unreachable to make them chase you. You're becoming unreachable because you genuinely have better things to do. You're not setting boundaries to prove a point. You're setting boundaries because you value your peace. You're not growing to show them what they missed. You're growing because growth is what you do now. Strategic transformation is manipulation. Authentic transformation is evolution. And people can feel the difference. Epictetus taught, "Seek not for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and you will be content." You stopped wishing for them to regret losing you. Whether they regret it became irrelevant. You're living your life, building, creating, and one day, you realize you haven't thought about them in weeks. They exist somewhere in your past, like a restaurant that closed down. You don't hate it. You don't miss it. You just don't think about it. That's true moving on. When you truly move on, when you genuinely stop caring whether they regret anything, that's when their regret becomes inevitable. They see someone who doesn't need them at all, for anything. You're complete without them. Seneca said, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a man who is alive." You stopped fearing their rejection, so you started living fully. This is the ultimate irony. The best way to make someone regret losing you is to stop trying to make them regret losing you. When you release that need, you release the last bit of power they had over you. You know your worth now. Not because they finally see it, but because you see it. And once you see your own worth, everyone else's opinion becomes background noise. Conclusion: 9 attitudes, each one building on the last. You became unreachable without being rude. You stopped defending yourself. You celebrated wins without seeking applause. You moved forward without closure. You stopped competing and created your own lane. You became selectively generous. You stopped reacting to provocations. You celebrated their success without bitterness. And you stopped needing them to regret anything. These aren't manipulation tactics. They're evolution markers. The people who undervalued you will regret it. Not because you orchestrated their regret, but because you focused on your growth, and their regret became a natural consequence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane." You escaped the insanity of seeking validation from people who were never capable of giving it. And now you're free. Free to build without their approval. Free to win without their acknowledgement. Free to exist without their validation. Subscribe to this channel. We're building a community of people who refuse to shrink themselves for others' comfort. People who understand that the best revenge is outgrowing the need for revenge. Pick one attitude to focus on this week. Just one. If it's being unreachable, start responding on your time. If it's stopping defending yourself, notice when you start to justify and choose silence. If it's celebrating privately, achieve something and don't post about it. If it's moving on without closure, decide you're healing without their apology. If it's stopping competition, redirect comparison energy to your own goals. If it's being selective with energy, say no to one request that doesn't deserve your yes. If it's stopping reactions, choose neutrality to the next provocation. If it's celebrating others, congratulate someone genuinely. If it's stopping caring about their regret, catch yourself checking if they're watching and choose not to care. One attitude, 1 week. Real practice. This isn't a quick fix. This is a fundamental reorganization of how you show up in the world. But the result is becoming someone you don't regret being, someone you respect, someone you're proud of. The people who undervalued you will regret it, but you won't even notice. Because you'll be too busy living a life so good that their regret is irrelevant. That's the goal. That's the victory. That's freedom. Now go get it.